right, well, it is 10 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started. Welcome. Thank you all so much for being here today. If it's your first time, thank you so much for joining the virtual Coffee with a Curator program. If you've been attending, again, as always, I want to thank you all so much for being frequent supporters. So again, so excited you're here today. I will say today's program, I'm going to try to stay professional. My daughter is here. She's not feeling well, so I'm at home. So anyway, it's might be some background noise, so I'm sorry about that. So I'll try to mute myself when anyone else is talking. But we will go ahead and begin. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I wanted to remind everyone that our programs, again, are being recorded. So if you miss a program or if you want to share it with someone who wasn't able to attend, you can find them on the KSU MARB YouTube channel. So you can just go into YouTube and put in KSU MARB or Museums, Archives, and Rare Books, and you'll find our full suite of recorded virtual Coffee with a Curator programs. So those are available. And I think that's my last bit of housekeeping before I tell everyone happy Halloween to everyone who celebrates it this weekend. Should be fun, and that's going to inform our program today. As you know, the theme is book frights, so I am very, very excited. It's going to be a fun day today. We're going to talk about scary stories. No, it's fine. It's okay. We're going to talk about scary stories in books, and we're also going to talk about scary preservation issues that can happen to books. But before we dive into the content, we're going to do our Where's Andrew segment. So again, if you're new, every week, Andrew, can you raise your hand?
Hello.
Every week, Andrew is somewhere different. He's at some kind of bookish place that has to do with the theme. So Andrew, would you like to be so kind as to give us any clues?
Well, my place today, as you can see, is rather gothic. And I think that might be enough.
Okay, so let's have at it. It's something gothic.
That is definitely not it. That is definitely not enough, Andrew.
Well,
is it in Transylvania?
Actually, no. I looked into that. I did find Vlad Imperial's library, but decided not to use it. This is a much nicer library.
Well, I'm going to go ahead. Okay, so sometimes it helps if we guess a geographic area. Have we pinned that down yet? Have we pinned down, I don't know, maybe England somewhere?
It is in England.
Does it have to do with either, I'm trying to make a connection here, Mary Shelley or Bram Stoker?
Actually, no, neither of them. I will say, it is a house library.
It's not a house library. Is it connected to a specific book?
Yes.
Okay, that helps. Okay, we just got to figure out which book.
Yes.
Oh dear. So Tamara already said, she already said it's not connected to a book by Mary Shelley or Bram Stoker. So not Dracula or Frankenstein.
I found it on Google.
You did? Okay, well, I need a hint about the book it's connected to.
This place is much like a castle, as is the book.
Oh.
And this is the inspiration for the book.
Does it have to do with the Castle of Otranto? Let's see.
Yes.
Oh, the first
Go Joellen.
Yeah, you're right. The first Gothic novel.
This is Strawberry Hill House, the home of Horace Walpole. One day, he was inside his house and had a nightmare, and that became the inspiration of Castle of Otranto.
Wow, that is.
Now, the other fun thing, this is not book related, it's just interesting. Horace Walpole was actually into Gothic revival architecture well before it was cool. This is one of the earliest examples of Gothic revival in England, dating back to the 1740s. It caused actually a brief revival called Strawberry Hill Gothic, which faded pretty quickly before being revived later with the rest of Gothic revival. So that's my nice architecture aspect to it.
That is perfect. And yay, thank you also to Tamara, because for when you started to say it, I was like, oh yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Andrew. That was a perfect connection. And also, as usual, Andrew has put a wonderful handout that tells us more about this place. That's in the chat, so you can download the handout so you can learn. Andrew, you just never cease to come up with perfect bookish places that we can travel to each week. So thank you so much for that. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our next section. I'm very excited. So I want to start off by getting contributions from the group, those who want to. If you have a scary book that you like, and I have to say, I am not a person who likes to read a lot of, I don't really read that many mysteries or suspense, horror. It's not really me, or even Gothic. But I do have one book that scares me that I really like, so I'll share that one. But I want everyone who wants to contribute, if you don't mind telling us the name of your favorite scary book and maybe a little bit about it and why it scares you. Again, no pressure to share, only if you want to. So would anyone like to go first?
I'll go ahead and go.
Okay.
I have tons of favorite scary books, and it's really hard to narrow it down. And but I think my favorite book that has been my favorite book for years and years is The Stand by Stephen King. It's over, I don't know how long it is, over 1,000 pages, and I've read it like multiple times. It's just I used to have recurring dreams about The Stand. I read it so many times. Anyway.
Well, wouldn't those, so, okay, you had dreams about it. So wouldn't those be nightmares about it?
Yeah, they were creepy, but I wasn't scared.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know, I guess.
Well, can you tell us a little bit though more about what it's about?
Oh, so there is a man-made virus that gets loose here in America, and it spreads across the world, I think. And it kills like 90% of the population of the earth or something like that. And so there's a group of survivors who make their way to Boulder, Colorado, which is the good people. And then there's a group of survivors who end up making their way to Las Vegas, which are the bad people. And they it becomes like a good and evil thing. It's not just about the apocalypse of dead people. It's about rebirth and restarting the world and restarting the country. But there's also some, what's the word I'm thinking of? Mystical kind of stuff to it, like I don't know. It's good.
When did you first read it?
I think I was like in 8th grade or something like that.
Has it lost its appeal after the pandemic?
Oh, no, actually, somebody said that to me. Was it you who said that to me before?
Probably me.
It does hit really close to home after the pandemic, but there are so many differences.
Oh, okay. So I was wondering, I'm like, is this still fun to read after too close to real life?
No, it's fun to read because you're like, oh, our pandemic is nothing like their pandemic. So at least there's that.
Interesting. Well, I'm kind of looking at I'm looking in the, okay, just hold on one second. I'm looking in the chat, and Helen said that she reads the Sanatorium, but reading it very slowly because she can only read it when her husband is home, so she's not alone in the house. Absolutely, completely understand that. I think Mr. Williams said that he did that one time when he was reading a book alone during a thunderstorm, reading like a Gothic novel. Wasn't a good idea. Tamara says Edgar Allan Poe is her favorite scary author. Ah, yes, lots of those. Okay, wonderful. Those stories. I will say the Telltale Heart, that one really creeped me out. It was so good, but it was so creepy. It was so good though. Absolutely. Megan has her hand up. And then I'll get Megan, and then I'll keep going with the chat. And then Nancy, did you have a comment too?
I do.
Okay, right after Megan, I'll get you. Okay, Megan, can you tell us something about your favorite scary book?
Yeah, so I read one in March, and I read it in a week, and it was the longest book I ever read, but I read it so fast. And it's by, I don't know how to say his last name, so I'm gonna butcher it, but I'm gonna try. Stephen Chubowski, Imaginary Friend. He also wrote Perks of Being a Wallflower, which I've never read, but I saw the movie and I was like, okay, so you went from writing this to then going complete 180 and writing this absolutely crazy book.
Yeah.
And I read it. I have a very bad memory. I have to keep reading journals for me to remember what I enjoyed and what I didn't like about a book. So, but I'm looking like at the description to give my kind of spiel about what it's about. So it kind of follows this main character. His name's Christopher, and he's like 8 or something. I thought it was very odd. Like you never really have a character for a more adult novel being a literal child, but it was cool. So his like mother and him were like running away from this like really crappy dude who like abused the mom. So she was running away from an abusive relationship. They find this nice little town in Pennsylvania, I think. And they're like liking it there. Everybody's really great. But then Christopher like goes missing into the woods for like 6 or 7 days. And then he comes back, but he now hears a voice in his head. And this voice is telling him to go back into the woods where he went missing and build this tree house. And it goes in crazy. And then it's like 700 pages in and you're like, wait, what? And you find out all these things are happening. And there's like this whole like, also like Maggie had the good versus evil thing. It was a lot of that in there. And I was like, my mind was blown. I had to just keep reading it. And I had like a huge research paper I was supposed to be working on. And I was like, not important book. So it was pretty insane. And I don't read long books. Like I'm too afraid to read or commit to any Stephen King novels. Like I like horror. I like to be scared on occasion with other people around me. But I've never been able to commit to a very long book because I'm like, okay, that's a lot of commitment and I don't have that in me. But I was able to read this like 750 page book in like 6 days. So I say, Maggie, you ought to read it. I think you would really like it. And anybody else who likes horror books.
Tell me the name of it again.
Imaginary Friend, Stephen Chubowski, Chbosky.
I will check it out.
Yes.
Wow. Oh my goodness, Megan. That does sound really intriguing. And I think it says something that you were able to just like, you just had to finish it. I always love hearing about books like that when people just have to finish them. So thank you for that wonderful description. That was great. And then I know Nancy had a comment, and then I know Eric has one too.
The first one I was going to talk about is when Stephen King was a new writer. This was in the 70s. And I had read Carrie. And then I got from the library, Salem's Lot. My husband was away on a business trip. My children were in bed, asleep. And I was reading this at night and I could not finish it. It was just so scary. I couldn't stand it. That was the last Stephen King book I ever read. But I was later in the 70s, I was in a graduate program at the University of Maine, and I met Stephen King. And I was teaching at the time at a middle school. So I invited Stephen King to come to my class to talk to my students. And he did. And the only thing I remember about it, because I was really scared with him anyway, but the only thing I remember is that he told the kids that he slept with a nightlight. And I thought I thought that was something to really remember about Stephen King.
I had no idea you met Stephen King and invited him to your classroom. That is incredible.
Yes.
I'm really jealous because Stephen King is amazing. And, you know, I sleep with a nightlight too. So I think that's just something about people who like scary stuff.
That
Like
could very
they like
well
to
be.
scare themselves. They
Yes.
need nightlights.
That
Yes.
is so interesting. Eric says Stephen King must be scared of his own stories, I guess.
I think
I'm
so.
thinking that too. Absolutely. Wow, that's amazing, Nancy. Oh my goodness. See, this is why we all need to get together each week and talk. You guys have such incredible book history stories that I had no idea about. That's amazing. Wow. That's fascinating. And Nancy, I bet some of your students, they probably still remember that. They probably
I
still
bet they
tell
do.
people
Yes.
that they had Stephen King come to their class. That's amazing. Okay, Eric, would you like to tell us about your favorite scary book or story or author?
Yeah, so I did find an actual book, but it's more like I'm interested in the particular concept. I was drawn to the book itself because of the particular like monster that's in it. So the book, which I have not read, but I'm thinking very seriously about finding myself a copy if I can, is Kaidan, Stories and Studies of Strange Things. And it was written by this, this guy whose name escapes me right now, who was Irish Greek or something. He was from somewhere in Europe. But then he like relocated to Japan and made this book, which is just a compilation of like Japanese scary legends and stuff. And so the monster that I discovered that led me to this book is called Noberabol. And in contrast to a lot of Japanese demons, it is not actually dangerous. It's just very creepy. So there's other like more dangerous like demons or yokai. One of them is called Kuchisakeona, which is like this woman who's got like cuts like the Joker in her mouth. And then she'll like show up in like usually dark alleys of like cities and things. And she'll corner somebody and she'll say something like, "Do you think I'm pretty?" And if you say yes, then she cuts your face to look like hers. And if you say no, then she kills you. So the only way to escape her is to give an answer that confuses her for just long enough for you to run away. So that's sort of the general tone of a lot of Japanese demons, but Noberabol doesn't do that. It's like designed just to give people a little fright. So the Noberabol's whole thing is that it doesn't have a face. But other than that, it looks entirely like a normal person. And usually there's some kind of other creature that's like disguising itself as a human that typically the seer recognizes, and then it scares them by revealing that it has no face. So sometimes they'll be like facing away from the people, and then the people will come up to them and then they'll turn around and you'll see they don't have a face. Or there's a bunch of different stories where they do have faces, but then the faces like melt away to be nothing. So one particular one like that is there was a guy who went to the Imperial Palace to go fishing in one of the ponds on the palace grounds. And this was a bad idea because apparently it was close to a graveyard and also it was sacred. So they're kind of hitting you with a double whammy there. A bunch of people tell him not to do this, but he goes anyway. And then he meets this very beautiful woman. Don't know why it's always women. It's probably something to think about. But she's very beautiful and she's like, "Don't do this." And he's like, "Oh, well," and he starts fishing and then all of her features just melt away and he gets really freaked out. So he runs home. And then his wife is like, "I told you not to go to that sacred pond to fish. How dare you? You're a terrible person." And then her features melt away. And then that's like the end of the story. So yeah, that is one of my favorites.
What's the name of the book again?
Kaidan, Stories and Studies of Strange Things. It was published in 1904, I think, and apparently used as the basis for a 1964 film And it's probably spelled like this.
Yeah, I just found it. It's Kwaidan is Kwaidan.
Yeah.
Wow. So those, I guess those creatures or demons that you were describing, so those are rooted in like legends?
Yes.
Wow. And that's something that I'm not familiar with at all, because one thing that our curator emeritus, Mr. Williams, always told me, he's like, every, country or region has their own kind of scary or gothic tradition. And some of them we're more used to than others. But that's really interesting. I had never really considered the idea of like Japanese horror and legends. And that's so interesting. Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Eric. It's fascinating. And that's really creepy too. That's kind of cool.
Right? I was looking for a Halloween costume and then I was like, I want to go as that.
Wow.
Eric, is that movie Spirited Away? Is some of the characters in the foundation for that? Is it based on the old lore that you're talking about?
Yes, a lot of Spirited Away is based on that old lore, and the actual, like the main demon character is named Kaonasi or No Face. It's slightly different though, because like it's like a completely different kind of thing, because No Face doesn't have a face, but he does have a mask that looks kind of like a face, which I don't know, maybe that's connected to like old theater traditions where they would use the masks instead of like actually showing the actors' faces and things. I'm not 100% sure on that, but yeah, it's very, very much based in traditions about surrounding Japan's legends and native beliefs.
That is really cool. And I remember watching Spirited Away in, I think, 7th grade or something. And yeah, I have like, it's funny, I have little images in my head. It was so long ago I saw it, but there are certain things that just kind of stick with you about that one. So that's fascinating. So very cool. Thank you so much, Eric. Does anyone else have a scary story or book or author that they want to share? Camilla?
So I normally like my horror in bite-sized chunks. I like to read short stories, particularly by Algernon Blackwood, and that's good enough for me. But over the Coffee with the Curators last spring, there was talk about Gothic literature and Dracula. So I decided to start checking off some horror novels off my bucket list. And I read The Vampire and Frankenstein and Dracula all back to back. And I decided to read them during the day just to give myself that little barrier. But in Dracula, he comes to England and he is a bat and he's beating up against a window. And I'm sitting next to a window at this point. And when it gets to be very intense, a bird hits the window. And it took me longer to recover than the bird. So,
oh my goodness. What are the odds of that?
I don't know, but that was the high point, and I had to put the book down for a little while to recover.
Oh my goodness, I can only imagine. Oh wow, that's it makes for a great book story though. Not gonna lie. I'm sorry that you had to recover from that trauma. That makes for a great book story. Oh, that's awesome. So I have to ask Camille just one follow-up question. Since this is not normally the genre that you read, did you enjoy reading those 3 back to back?
I did, and it was kind of fun for the historical knowledge of knowing The Vampire and Frankenstein were written basically as a ghost story competition. And then I was like, well, now that I've read The Vampire, I have to read Dracula. I have to know this story as well.
Great. And I'm so glad that our programs have inspired you to do that. And so that was Maggie. Maggie, you gave that presentation. So
yeah, I was actually going to say that I've read so many different Gothic novels, especially recently ones that I haven't ever read before. And a lot of them are not what everybody makes them out to be. They're actually very deep books, and they're not just scary stories to tell in the dark. There's more to them, the more substantial than I expected, I guess.
absolutely. So yay, that's a success story. Awesome. Thank you, Camilla. Andrew?
So I know I've talked a lot about the like medical books I've read and just medical history. I know you probably all think I'm a bit crazy for reading all that. But I do promise a lot of the nonfiction I read is not gross or horrifying in any way. But the most recent one I read, I actually read it this week in honor of Halloween, is called The Butchering Art. It is a history of Joseph Lister and his efforts in making Victorian surgery more sanitary. But it also talks a lot about Victorian surgery in general, and like especially like before anesthesia. And it was definitely, I'm not sure I'd say scary, but definitely a gross one. It seemed appropriate for Halloween.
And I feel like that's one where as you read about it, you can't help but like kind of like cringe and just imagine. I don't know. Sometimes when I read about stuff like that, I like feel it happening to me.
I mean, there's an entire section of there's like a paragraph or so devoted to how to cut off a leg, amputate a leg in 30 seconds, or 60 seconds, but still.
I mean,
and it
I
like
guess you don't want
describes how to do it.
I guess you don't want it to be slow, but it just, I don't know. Yikes. So you, oh, Andrew, so you said that was a nonfiction book you were reading.
Yes.
Okay. I see. Okay. Interesting. Well, thank you so much, Andrew. So did anyone else have a comment that they wanted to share? Lori?
Hi, everybody. So I also like my terror in the form of short stories. So I have read, there are just so many books. It is impossible to choose a favorite because there are a lot of top tier scary stories. But I tried to think of one that would come to me through my leisure reading and academic reading career that would kind of surface unbidden, something that had burned itself into my brain. And there were actually two stories, but only one was fiction. The other one was nonfiction. But I think The Yellow Wallpaper, which is a short story, and it was probably required reading in a lot of our English classes, but Charlotte Perkins Gilman was the author on that. And it basically chronicles in a few short months the descent of a woman into complete and utter madness. And it's a scary, if you value your sanity, it is a hard thing to read because she literally she's gaslighting herself, and she becomes obsessed. They're renovating their house, and her husband rents this old family mansion out in the country and she's a little fragile. I mean, fragile anyway. She says she has a temporary nervous depression, which was a common diagnosis for women. So this is why a lot of times this will fall into feminist literature, because she's completely marginalized in this story because of how she's being treated. But anyway, so she's in this one big room in this house, and it has this horrific yellow wallpaper in the room. And she's in the room most of the day. So she becomes fixated on this wallpaper. And then I'm gonna read you a line from the story. Just to give you an idea how bad this wallpaper is. She's amazed at how awful it is. And it says, there is a recurrent spot where the pattern lolls like a broken neck and the two bulbous eyes stare at you upside down. This is what she's seeing in the design, in the vines and the flowers on this wallpaper. And she says, I'm going to follow this pattern to its conclusion. As long as it takes, I'm gonna track it. And then she realizes nothing lines up. So none of the patterns are in alignment, and everything's out of plumb, and it's making her brain itch. She's having a really hard time with it. But then she realizes that she senses a figure, a humanoid type shadow figure behind the design in the paper. Okay, so now she's fixating on that. So on top of the crappy design in the wallpaper, now you got the scary person behind the behind the design. And I have to say, for 10 pages, this story terrified me. And the fact that I remembered it, you know, without like really digging, I was like, okay, I think this one might be worth mentioning. But anyway, so there. I don't want to spoil the ending, but the wallpaper made her wackadoodle, and I thought it was worth sharing with the group.
I'm so glad you brought that one up, because again, I remember reading it in college, but I don't know. I know it was homework, so I'm not sure I completely understood. But Andrew, I think your comment is making me think of like something my professor might have said. I do think that there was something that was like, and I don't know if that was something that we talked about that in class. I remember having that kind of discussion in class. So that's an interesting point. But yeah, anyway, that's a great one to bring up, Laura. And I have to say, when a short story can have that kind of effect on you, I think that's also a testament to how wonderful that piece of art is crafted, because, you know, short stories, they don't have a lot of time to introduce you, to get you invested into this person, and then also to terrify you.
Yes.
And so I think that's great. Yeah, I remember reading that one. So
thanks for letting me share.
Oh, of course. Thank you for sharing. Does anyone else have anything that they would like to share? If not, I have one. As y'all know, I really don't read a lot of scary things. I don't know, it's just not me. I'm actually scared very easily. I don't even like watch trailers of. My husband's always like, look away, because I don't even watch trailers of, you know, scary movies on TV, because I just can't unsee it. And so anyway, but there is one book that it really scares me, but I love it. I don't know if any of you have heard of The Lovely Bones, by, I think the way you pronounce it is Alice Sebold, I think maybe the way you pronounce it. It was written in 2002, and it later became a movie. I forgot what year the movie came out. But anyway, I read this book in 2010-ish. I think the movie might have come out in 2009. But I read this book around 2010, 2011, when I was in college. And I just could not put it down. It was one of those books like Megan described, where you have homework to do, or you're doing your homework just so you can read your book. So that's kind of how mine was. And basically, for those who aren't familiar with it, it's a story of Susie Salmon, and she's a 14-year-old girl who was murdered by her neighbor. And so Susie is now in heaven watching life go on. She watches her family unit grieve her unsolved murder, and she watches them, especially her dad, attempt to bring forth justice. She also kind of watches her friends evolve, and she especially watches her killer attempt to fly under the radar and evade all suspicion. So it's very suspenseful. But I have to read the first paragraph of this book to you. And it's funny, I thought I was going to be in the office today, so the book is actually at work. So anyway, it's on my desk. But I do have the text of the first paragraph. And it's just, after I read that, I had no more hope. I was going to finish this book. I was hooked. So I'll just read the first paragraph, and it says, "My name was Salmon, like the fish, first name Susie. I was 14 when I was murdered on December 6, 1973. In newspaper photos of missing girls from the 70s, most looked like me, white girls with mousy brown hair. This was before kids of all races and genders started appearing on milk cartons or in the Daily Mail. It was still back when people believed things like that didn't happen." And so that's how it starts. It's really, really good. It's definitely a suspense, but it's not really a mystery at all, because one thing that I find different and fascinating about this book is that in the first few lines, you learn everything about and I don't feel like I'm giving it away because this is literally how it starts. You learn about how she died. You learn who the killer is. She's telling you everything. She relives it with you. And that's the first few pages. And the rest of it, she's watching the aftermath of her murder and its impact on everybody that was involved. And so it is so scary, especially everything involving the neighbor who killed her, because he is like creep of all creeps. And so it is a very, but it's really good. I will say though, I know we've talked about, you know, books that we often read, you know, a few times, and books that we like to read every year and things like that. But I have to say, I don't think, now that I'm a mother, I'm not sure I would actually read this book and enjoy it, because a lot of it you get a firsthand look at the parents' torture of their child being murdered, and they don't know what happened to her. So I actually don't think I could read this anymore. So I'm glad that I read it then, but it's not a book that I am planning on reading anymore. But it was so good. So if it sounds like something, if you like kind of that suspense and things, and it's just really well written. So that's the end of my scary book journey. I'm done. But anyway, thank y'all so much for sharing today. And if you have anything else that comes to mind, or books that you want to recommend to the group, please do put them in the chat. I think that because we do have a lot of people that love to read scary books. Some of the books, and again, even though I don't like to read scary books, some of the books y'all mentioned are actually really tempting. So I don't know, I might have a moment of courage and actually get those. So anyway, awesome. So now we are going to enter into our haunted rare book room and try to find our way out. Because once you're in, you can't get out unless you have to. Oh, Eric, thank you so much for attending. I know you had to leave early. I'm so glad you were able to come. It was so nice to see you today. Thank you. But
Nice to
yeah,
be
so
here.
we're going to bye. So we're going to enter into this haunted room and see if we can make our way out. And again, I apologize for the background noise. I'm not sure I'll be able to. I'm going to try to, okay. Let me try to share my screen the right way. Sorry, I have so many tabs open. It's making it difficult to share. Okay. All right. This should work. Okay. So this looks familiar. This looks like the rare book room, but look, you can't get out. We're stuck. It just goes into a spiral into nowhere. So y'all are stuck here. Unless we open the envelopes, that's the only way we're going to be able to get out. We have to open our envelopes, and we have to do the trick or reads. Okay. So we're going to do all the trick or reads and see if we can figure out how to get out. Okay. Or at least pass our little test. Okay. So we've got a couple envelopes here. Y'all want to start on the right side or on the left side?
Start on the left.
Start on the left. Okay, I'm gonna start the top left. Oh, okay, we have a little scenario here. Okay, let's see about this. All right, so we have a little book that's talking to us. This book says, "My owner loves books. She has books of all different sizes. I'm a miniature size book, only measuring 2 inches by 1.5 inches. I'm currently being bullied by some of the big folio size books or folio format books that measure around 12 inches by 19 inches. I am scared. What should be done?" So we have something scary happening to a book. Okay, so since we all love books, and we know how to take care of our books, and we're learning how to take care of our books better, what should be done to help this frightened book? And this is something that we deal with in the rare book room, in the stacks, if you've ever seen our rare book stacks, this is what tends to happen when we have books of varying sizes. Okay, so what does the owner need to do to help this book? Anybody know?
Should the owner pull the little scared book out and put it on its own shelf with some other like-size books?
I would agree. That's exactly what I do in the rare book room. And I've actually put mine right across from each other. So I've got one shelf of large folio format books that are lying, they're not lying, you know, standing vertically like most books on our shelves. They're flat. And because they're huge and they need to do that, and it's less stressful on the books. But our miniature, because this is this size right here, books that are 2 by 1.5 inches or smaller are considered miniature size books. That's generally their measurements that they have. So those books, they really, regardless of their genre or title or whatnot, they really need to be shelved with books of like sizes, because otherwise they're going to get pushed around. It's not good for those books. They can get lost in the shuffle. So anyway, if you have miniature size books in your collection, it's a good thing to shelve them separately with books of, books of their own size. So yay. Okay, awesome. So we figured that one out. We passed that one. Let's see. Okay, I think we got turned around. Uh-oh, we got turned around. I don't know where we were. I think we were over here. Okay. All right, so now we'll do this bottom left. Oh, another scenario. Okay. All right, so this book says, normally I live a perfectly happy life on my owner's bookshelf. She really loves me and reads me each Christmas, but something happened yesterday. A pipe burst upstairs and caused flooding. I, along with several of my fellow book friends, got wet. I know my owner is overwhelmed trying to work with the plumbing company and salvage her bathroom, but I hope she checks on us soon. It's pretty warm in here, and I'm noticing the presence of a fuzzy black substance growing on the wettest parts of my pages. What is happening to me and what should be done? Okay, so we've got a book that's a little bit nervous because there's a problem happening. So it's pretty obvious what's happening inside the pages of this book. It's actually quite scary. Yes, exactly. It's quite, so if you take care of books and if you have books, this is actually a really scary situation. As Andrew said, there's mold. So one thing, we all probably know how to identify mold, but does anyone actually know how to treat mold on books? How to deal with that scary situation?
You have to vacuum it. Will
That's
a HEPA filter vacuum?
Exactly. And there's a difference too, is that you don't want to do that if you see how the book described there's a fuzzy black substance, and if it's smearing, if it's that's active mold. So we don't want to vacuum or really treat active mold. That's actually dangerous for the person doing it, the human, and dangerous for the book. So what you're going to want to do is you need to dry it out first. We need to make the mold inactive. So sometimes what you can do, what repositories will do sometimes, if it's like a mold outbreak, sometimes they have to actually freeze collections of books to just stop the mold growth and to just get control of it. Because sometimes there's just so many books, you need to do something to just stop it. But you want to dry the books out, let everything, let the mold stop, generating, I guess, and let it become inactive until it's more dusty or maybe wet powdery. And then, as Maggie said, with a HEPA vacuum, you need to kind of go in and vacuum, and you need to wear a mask. You need to wear gloves. You need to make sure you're taken care of because you can get sick from that. If you feel like it's way too overwhelming, you can talk to a conservator who can maybe do something about it, because you don't want to get overwhelmed and make yourself sick or do anything like that. And so anyway, I always wanted to ask that one because I know that's a scary thing that can happen at books, but sometimes we just don't know how to treat it. So yes, that is what's happening. Awesome. Oh, and then after you clean the materials, after you do the vacuuming, you need to, I think the NADCC says you need to maybe bleach the tool, the vacuum that you use. I'll check on that, but I'm pretty sure you need to clean the materials in a specific way to make sure that the next time you use it, you're not spreading mold spores. Anyway, awesome. Yay. Okay, so we are getting ourselves out of this haunted place. All right, I'll try this one. Oh, trick or treat. Well, we can't do anything about this. However,
It's a spooky trick or treat.
Trick or treat, that's right. Oh.
That means it's my turn to read something and try to guess who wrote this, what book it's from. It's a really scary, spooky, not scary, spooky quote from a literature. All right. He had come like a thief in the night, and one by one, the revelers in this blood-bedewed halls of their revel, and one by one dropped the revelers in the blood-bedewed halls of their revel, and died each in the despairing posture of his fall, and darkness and decay and the red death held illimitable dominion over all.
Oh,
Sounds like, oh,
Yes, that is Edgar Allan Poe, The Mask of the Red Death.
Ooh, gives you shivers. Thank you, Maggie. Okay. So that is what's going to happen every time we see a jack-o'-lantern. Let's see this next one. I can't remember which one I just did. Did I do the top one or the bottom one? I did the bottom one already. No, I need to do this one. Okay, great. Oh, okay. So we have something else, another scenario. Okay. I am a book from the 1940s and I am very attractive. I was published by Alfred A. Knopf. If you didn't know, that was a mighty fine publisher in my day. My owner fills her bookshelves with other books like me, mostly modern first editions. She has the strangest habit though. She always removes our jackets. I really hate that because she's ruining my outfit and I'm cold. I'm not sure where she's storing our jackets. Hopefully she'll return them to us soon. Should I be concerned? Okay, Lori shaking her head, you should be concerned. So Lori, I'm gonna pick on you. Would you love to tell us about book jackets?
I would love to tell you about book jackets. Dust jackets are, to me, 50% of the value of any book. But there are some early period, for example, in the 40s and 50s, there are, and actually 30s, decorative book covers were very popular. And so the evolution of the dust jacket, if there was a dust jacket, you want to keep the dust jacket. If you decide not to keep it on the book, the only reason I can think of not wanting to keep it on the book is it does have some kind of decorative binding on it, maybe pictorial boards or something that you want to see. But book jackets should really stay with the book because it's gonna protect the boards. Number one, it's going to do its job, but it's also going to help collectors. This is a small thing, differentiate between a real book and a book club edition. Because any book from the 40s, 50s, 60s, and well into the 70s, if you have a book that looks like a first edition and it doesn't have a jacket, your first question to the person that owns it is this a book club edition? Because without that jacket, there are points on the jacket that will tip you off that it's not a retail publication. And those are things like it'll have a price on the jacket. If there's no price on the jacket, there's a strong possibility, it's not guaranteed, but there's a strong possibility that it's a book club edition. It may have, there may be edition states of a jacket. So you may have a first edition book, the book itself, but the jacket may have been produced in multiple states. So that helps you know where in the publishing process your book lived, where it was born. But yes, my encouragement would be, if you buy a book and you can keep the jacket on the book, please do. Just be aware, constant handling, shelving, reshelving, moving will degrade the edges of the jacket. So we call that shelf wear. And there are good ways to take books on and off the shelf so that you don't damage either the jacket or the spine, particularly the spine and the corners on the book itself. Joy Ellen, did I get remotely close to where you were?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Because it is a scare, and I think what's, in the past, it was very common to remove the dust jackets because, when you're trying to read, let's be honest, sometimes they get a little bit, annoying to kind of finagle with them. But Lori is so correct that not only do they help us, they protect the book. That's what they were originally for, but they also give us, help us understand which edition we're looking at. They help us understand the book's authenticity. And then also I've noticed that there's sometimes bibliographical information on dust jackets that you're not going to find anywhere else except that jacket. And especially information that's very historically, contextual.
Right. And one other thing I wanted to mention on antiquarian books, it is, if there is a dust jacket, you can expect that dust jacket to be plain paper. It should not, very few of them held any kind of heavy decoration. There are a couple of exceptions, but normally it was a functional piece of paper or linen, heavy linen paper that was designed to protect decorative boards when they were being sent to the person that bought the book. So in that case, yeah, you'd probably want to take the jacket off, but you would want to store it flat somewhere so that it doesn't get damaged, like, a piece of discarded paper.
Yeah, the beautifully decorated dust jackets, I guess we don't start seeing until maybe like the 1920s or so, or maybe a little bit before then.
I would say, well, I recall, I think in ours, I've got some dust jackets, I think in the 30s. I want to say I do have a few in the 30s, 40s and 50s, mid-century. As you saw the artistic movement grow, you saw the designs and the art on the book covers grow. There's a correlation there. So in the Art Deco period, there were just some magnificent Art Deco book covers, and yeah, you absolutely want to try to get a book that has that, if that's the book you're shopping for, or at a minimum, try to get the book, and then when you find one, you can shop up and then replace to get the best copy that you can in your library.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lori, for that. Okay, so let's move to, all right, let's see what we can find here. I'll just start here. Oh, okay, another question. The house where I live is so full of books. My owner collects them. The house is so full of books, my owner moved some of us to the attic for safekeeping. He said it's just temporary until he can clean out some other things. I don't like it here. It's hot and muggy. I was born in the 19th century and I'm noticing that my inside pages are starting to turn colors. They are getting darker and darker. My 9 greats grandmother was born in the 1600s. She's up here with me. She doesn't like the conditions here either, but her inside pages are not turning dark brown like mine. What is going on and what should be done? Okay, so for those of you who have had maybe any experience working with antiquarian books, oh, Andrew seems to know what might be happening. You want to tell us?
I think I have it. It's a difference in pages. The 1600s book would be more like a cloth rag paper. The 19th century would be the paper with the lignin in it, which is the acid that causes pages to yellow.
Absolutely. Andrew, you've been spending too much time with us, I see. Or either that or you're just smart. That is great. That's exactly what's going on. So sometimes, now, first of all, we all know we don't want any of our books in hot, muggy places. I mean, that's just not good at all. However, if we have a book that, is from the 19th century, that's a time when a lot of books were made with wood pulp pages that, as Andrew said, they have lignin. That's why wood really isn't the best, even with our bookshelves. A lot of us have, wooden bookshelves, which is fine. However, wood does off gas. It has a chemical called lignin, and that is acidic. And so that's why when people say, oh, I love old book smell, what they're really probably talking about is that wood pulp paper smell. It has like a earthy, and if you really sniff it, kind of like a vanilla, sometimes it's like smell, but the pages darken over time, and it doesn't take much. Think about wood, or think about newspapers of, many years ago. They darken a lot because they're just so pulpy. So when these pages are put in these kind of environments, they're going to darken. Now, a book that was produced in the 1600s would have been made on raglan paper, so much stronger fibers. And it was also made by hand, not by machine. It would have been washed. It would have been, all that was done by hand. So it's stronger, and those pages are more likely to endure difficult environmental conditions. And they're more likely to remain kind of their cream color maybe that they were. So anyway, we don't want books in attics or basements if we can help it. But especially if you have some pulpy books that you love, those have inherent vices anyway. So you really need to make sure that you don't put them in those kind of situations, because the pages will darken and fall apart. So thank you. We solved that scary situation. All right, let's try this one. Oh. Maggie, you're muted.
I just ruined it. Okay, I'll do it again. Trick or treat, spooky. Woo. Okay. So this one, I'm just paraphrasing a tiny little bit, because if I read it word for word, it's going to give away what book it is. So, okay. The house, not sane, stood by itself against its hills, holding darkness within. It had stood so for 80 years and might stand for 80 more. Within, walls continued upright, bricks met neatly, floors were firm, and doors were sensibly shut. Silence lay steadily against the wood and stone, and whatever walked there walked alone. Oh, it's a really good book. Come on, guys. Okay, so the house stood against its hills.
Oh, you told me about this book.
It's The Haunting of Hill House by
Yeah,
Shirley
The Haunting.
Jackson.
Like, you told me about that one. I've never read it, as y'all know, but that's one of your favorites. You love that one, don't you?
Yes, I love it.
Yes. Thank you, Maggie, for that. All right, let's see. I keep forgetting which ones I do. Let me see. I know I haven't done this one yet. Let's do that. This probably have to be our last one. I think. Let me see. Okay, this will be our last one for the day. All right. My owner is a bit of a show-off. He always wants people to know his book collection is better than theirs. He even placed our bookcase directly in front of a prominent window in the house. Our house faces east, so each morning I get lots of sun. Normally I like it, but lately I've noticed that the color of my spine is starting to look dull. My cover is still a strong forest green color. My spine looks more like a faded olive. I think my owner noticed it too when he removed me from the shelf last week, but he just shrugged it off. Should I be worried? What should be done? So this book is having a scary situation involving changing colors of her cover. So anyone know what's happening?
The damage, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say that I don't think the damage can be reversed. Nothing can be done about what's happened already. but it definitely should not be sitting in front of the prominent window in the house getting sun. And it especially should be behind glass, even that is UV, what's it called?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Kind of like that protected from like the,
Yeah, it filters it. Yeah.
filters it. Yeah. Nancy, is that what you were gonna say?
Yes, away from the window.
Exactly. Simply move it away from the window. And this is, I kind of made this one up because this is one that we see all the time, which is normal to do. You want your books to be, it's like, oh, I want light coming in the room and I've got my books. It looks so pretty. However, I've seen in our collection books that have their spines are a different color than their colors, or they're dull, they look faded because that's what light does, it fades. So that's why when we have people that come to our museum or come into our collection and they say, hey, can I take pictures? Sure, just no flash, because repeated light exposure will eventually fade books, and especially the sun. So anyway, that is something that is an easy thing to do and can really go a long way to keep your books out of scary situations. Well, I know we ran out of time today. I had a couple more situations, but we ran out of time. But Maggie, I think, can you just read us one more quote to get us out of this place? Because we're still stuck here. I think you reviewed it again.
I never do that. What is my problem? Okay, so this one's really short. Do you think she can see us talking to one another now? She said slowly. Do you think the dead come back and watch the living? It's kind of, I don't know, might be a little obscure. It's Rebecca, Daphne du Maurier.
Oh my goodness, wow. That's a great one. That was the key. Out. Rebecca was the key. Yay, that is great. Exciting. Thank y'all so much for joining us today and putting up with all my background noise. I appreciate it. And I hope, again, everyone has a wonderful, I think it was Halloween on like a Sunday this year, I think. Okay. Hope everyone has a great holiday if you celebrate that or just enjoys the harvest and the nippy weather that we have. Anyway, oh, and last thing, I really hope everybody can make it next week. We're going to kick off the celebration of Native American Heritage Month. And we are going to have a guest speaker from here at KSU talking about her work. I'm not going to give it away, but it's going to be really great. Please come, please invite your friends. It's going to be a great, week. So anyway, thank y'all so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.